All right, buckle up everybody, because today we are diving into Autobiography of a Yogi, the one and only, by Paramhansa Yogananda.
Wow.
And you have given us some seriously mind-blowing material here, stories that are just like begging us to dig deeper.
It's a lot, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I mean, we're talking healing photos,
Yeah.
gurus who can like materialize perfumes, people maybe bending time and space.
Yeah.
But, and here's the big but, we're bringing our skeptical hats along for the ride too. Got to keep it real.
Yeah. And I think what's really interesting about these sources is this tension, this pull between wanting to believe these incredible stories and then also having to sort of square them with like a more rational perspective, a critical thinking approach.
Yes, that tightrope walk, right?
Totally.
Between being open-minded and being like, wait, hold on a second, how is that even possible?
Exactly.
So with that in mind, let's jump right in.
Okay.
Yogananda claims that as a child, he was healed from cholera by focusing on a picture of Lahiri Mahasaya. Have you ever, I mean, I've been sick as a kid, but never anything quite that dramatic.
Right. And while the power of belief is certainly real, the sources you've provided kind of highlight that cholera, with proper medical care,
Right.
has a surprisingly high survival rate. And Yogananda himself seems to downplay the role of medical treatment, focusing instead on almost this magical healing experience.
Right. So that leads us to that question, right? Could this be a classic case of the placebo effect?
Yeah.
Maybe just believing in that photo's power actually helped him recover.
It's a really fascinating possibility. And this story, I think, highlights a key point that comes up again and again in the sources you shared, which is the power of belief, even without fully understanding, all the scientific mechanisms behind it, can have a really tangible impact on our experiences.
Yeah.
Both individually, but also, the sources point out, collectively. I mean, belief in holy pictures as sources of healing is a widespread phenomenon across cultures and religions.
That's so true. Okay, so maybe healing photos we can sort of wrap our heads around.
Maybe.
But what about bilocation?
Yeah.
Yogananda recounts this story of Swami Pranabananda appearing in two places at once. He's sent to find someone with a lost address. The Swami predicts his arrival.
Wow.
And then witnesses confirm that he never even left his original location. This is like bending the laws of space and time, right?
It's a compelling story for sure, and the details certainly make it seem like something extraordinary happened.
Right.
But one of your sources raises a really interesting question, which is, why bilocate for such a seemingly mundane task?
Oh, that's interesting.
Couldn't a simple message have gotten the job done?
Right. Good point.
Yeah.
But Pranabananda, being the, classic yogi that he was, basically says that, look, advanced spiritual practitioners, they can transcend these limitations of the material world.
Right.
It's like he's challenging, like, physics itself.
Yeah. And that's where this tension between the spiritual and the scientific really comes to a head.
Right.
Like, totally. Because despite countless anecdotal accounts of bilocation throughout history, across various traditions, cultures, whatever, the scientific evidence just isn't really there.
What about Baba Fakir Chand then?
Yes.
He believed that some gurus, they actually use trickery, like illusions, to make people think they had these supernatural powers.
Yeah. It's kind of a game changer.
That does kind of throw a wrench in things.
Absolutely. For Kirchand's perspective, it just injects this much-needed dose of skepticism. It makes us question whether we're witnessing genuine spiritual feats or just like really carefully crafted illusions meant to kind of inspire and wow followers.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Speaking of illusions, let's talk about Ganda Baba, a.k.a. the perfume saint.
Okay.
This guy claimed to be able to, like, materialize scents using yogic powers. And even Yogananda himself, he was skeptical at first. He was like, well, if you could just buy perfume, why even bother with this?
That's pretty funny.
I know, right? Very practical question.
I love that Yogananda had those moments, too.
Yeah, totally.
Like, he wasn't just blindly accepting everything.
Yeah.
But then Ganda Baba seemingly produces the scent of roses from Yogananda's hand.
Yeah.
And then jasmine from this flower that had no smell. It's a pretty convincing demonstration, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, this sounds like straight up magic.
It does.
But one of your sources, they make this really interesting connection.
Okay.
They connect this story to, like, modern-day magicians who use sleight of hand and illusion to pull off these seemingly impossible things. They even compare it to, like, the inexhaustible bottle trick.
Oh, yeah.
Where a magician pours all these different drinks from the same bottle.
It's a brilliant analogy, right? Because what seems impossible at first glance actually often has a very rational explanation rooted in like the art of illusion.
Right.
And so it reminds us that our senses can be super easy to deceive,
Oh, absolutely.
especially when dealing with something like scent, which is so subjective anyway.
Yeah. So basically, don't jump to conclusions, right?
Right.
There might be a simpler explanation.
Exactly.
All right. So we've gone from healing photos to potentially staged magic tricks.
Yeah.
But wait, there's more.
Oh, no.
Yogananda's book also includes stories about levitation.
Of course.
He describes this guy, Baduri Mahasaya, hopping around like a leaping frog.
Wow.
Talk about defying gravity.
Yeah. This is a classic example of how our interpretation of events can be like totally shaped by our existing beliefs.
Totally.
So the source you show draws this fascinating parallel to Saint Joseph of Cupertino, another figure from history,
Okay.
who was said to levitate.
Mm-hmm.
But skeptics argue that what seemed like this miraculous flight was actually just a combination of really powerful leaps, strategically placed landings, and then the subjective experience of the people who witnessed it.
So less like, breaking the laws of physics, more like a really amazing athletic performance.
Yeah, like just incredible physical ability.
Okay, I can buy that.
Yeah.
And that actually brings us to, like, a more modern example of this, right?
Yeah.
Maharishi Mahesh Yogi and his claims of yogic flying.
Yogic flying.
Yeah, I mean, it looks pretty impressive when you see it.
Right.
But what's really happening is, like, kind of bouncing on a cushion.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because it highlights how what we often perceive as supernatural, right, might actually just be a skillful manipulation of like physical laws.
Totally.
Or even just like misinterpretations of very subjective experiences.
Makes you wonder what else our brains and bodies are capable of.
It really does,
Like stuff we haven't even discovered yet.
Right.
This actually reminds me of the story about Ram Gopal Muzumdar, the sleepless saint.
Oh, yes.
Who claimed to have gone, like, years without sleeping. I mean, I get cranky after just one night of bad sleep. So.
Right. It's a claim that definitely pushes the boundaries of what we think is, like, biologically possible.
Yeah.
But here's where the sources get really interesting. They acknowledge that sleep, of course, is absolutely essential for our physical and mental well-being.
Right.
But they propose that deep meditation might offer some of those same restorative benefits. Ram Gopal himself even claimed that this state of superconsciousness provided a level of rest that was, like, even deeper than sleep.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, isn't that fascinating?
That is fascinating.
And what's even more amazing is that, like, the research actually supports this.
Really?
Meditation has been shown to reduce stress, reduce anxiety, improve your cognitive function, even increase gray matter in the brain.
That's amazing.
It's like giving your mind a spa day.
I love that.
Right.
Okay, get ready, because this next one is a real mind bender.
Okay, hit me.
Yogananda describes this experience he had with cosmic consciousness. And it includes things like, get this, spherical vision.
Okay.
Objects vibrating, this profound sense of oneness with everything. I mean, pretty wild, right?
And what I find so intriguing is the connection the source makes between Yogananda's description and descriptions of, like, psychedelic experiences.
Oh, wow.
They even include an excerpt from Aldous Huxley's The Doors of Perception, which explores similar themes like heightened perception, that sense of interconnectedness.
Yeah. It makes you wonder, right?
It does.
Like the different paths leading to the same destination.
Are we using different tools to tap into the same underlying reality?
Yeah, exactly.
It's a huge question.
It is.
And the source kind of acknowledges that both those mystical experiences and psychedelic experiences are ultimately products of, brain activity.
Yeah.
But it also encourages us to be open to the insights that they might offer, regardless of, like, how those states are achieved.
Right. So much we don't know.
So much.
Okay, let's talk about Sri Yukteswar, Yogananda's guru, and his apparent psychic abilities.
Oh, okay.
There's this story where he seemingly predicts the arrival of students who missed their train, and even prepares food for them. Next level intuition, right?
It does seem like a really incredible display of insight, but one of your sources kind of challenges us to consider, was this genuine clairvoyance?
Right.
Or just like a really well-timed hunch?
Okay, yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Well, Yogananda himself believed that correct hunches were actually like a form of thought transference.
Okay.
Like a subtle form of mind reading.
That's a fascinating
Yeah.
concept. But the source points out that, like, hunches are probabilistic.
Right.
We get them wrong all the time.
We do.
True thought transference would imply a level of accuracy that hunches just don't have.
Okay, good point.
Yeah.
This next bit gets a little more, I don't know, esoteric.
Okay.
Yogananda was kind of unsure about astrology, and he asked his guru if he should wear a protective bangle.
Okay.
Sri Yukteswar explains that these armlets can counteract negative planetary influences using something called astral light.
Mm.
And here's where the source is like super skeptical.
Yeah.
They question the explanation.
Yeah.
And they question astrology in general.
Yeah.
But they bring up the placebo effect again.
Right.
So like the belief in astrology, even if the claims themselves aren't scientifically backed up,
Yeah.
can still provide a sense of meaning and purpose.
Right. And that can have a really tangible impact on our lives.
Totally. It circles back to that power of belief, right?
It does.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So we may not fully understand like all the mechanisms at play,
Yeah.
but the impact can be undeniable.
Absolutely. Okay, before we move on, what stands out to you from these first few stories?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah, what's sparking your curiosity? Yeah.
I think what's really grabbing me is this tension
Yeah.
between like the extraordinary claims and then those moments of doubt, you know?
Totally.
Like even Yogananda himself, he wasn't just blindly accepting everything.
He was questioning.
Yeah, he was questioning.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes this so interesting, you know?
Totally.
It's not just about like believing every miracle story.
Right.
It's about grappling with these big questions
Yeah.
and figuring out what resonates with us on a personal level.
Exactly.
So yeah, that's what's really sticking with me so far.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a really great takeaway.
Cool.
And it sets us up really well for the rest of these stories, too, because
right.
there are some wild ones coming up.
Oh yeah, there are some wild ones coming up. All right, everybody, we are just getting started with this deep dive.
Buckle up.
Oh yeah, buckle up for sure. So stay tuned. We'll be right back after a quick break.
Can't wait.
You know, it's fascinating how these stories kind of blend like personal experiences with these big philosophical ideas.
It's true.
Like this next one, which gets into the whole concept of karma.
Yeah.
Yogananda talks about Sri Yukteswar falling ill after one of his students recovers, and he thinks it's because of a transfer of karma.
Yes. And this story really dives into that belief
Yeah.
that a guru can actually take on the karma, the suffering of their disciples. It's this powerful image of spiritual self-sacrifice.
Yeah, it is. But doesn't that raise some, I don't know, some tricky questions about responsibility?
Of course.
Like if a guru can just, I don't know, erase the consequences of your actions,
Yeah.
does that mean people can just make bad choices and get away with it?
You've hit on a really important point. One of the sources actually argues that this belief, it can be used to kind of explain away the suffering of gurus.
Oh, no, interesting.
Who are often seen as these like perfect beings
Right.
without actually dealing with the ethical implications.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It really makes you think about the whole concept of karma and how it relates to personal accountability.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, this next story is about Yogananda's vision of Kali.
Okay.
He describes praying to the goddess, initially doubting, but then having this experience where he sees her in a living form.
Intense.
Yeah, pretty intense.
And the sources connect this to a really common theme in lots of different religions.
Yeah.
Conversion narratives,
Oh.
where someone has this profound experience that solidifies their faith. They also highlight the story of Yogananda's brother-in-law, Satish,
Yeah.
who becomes a believer after what seems to be a miracle, this perfectly timed delivery of food.
Right, so was it divine intervention or just, like, incredibly good luck?
Who knows?
It's so interesting.
It makes you think about how much our existing beliefs shape how we interpret the world.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah.
All right, are you ready for this next one? Because it's a bit of a head-scratcher.
Hit me.
We're talking about Giri Bala, who claimed to have lived without eating for over 50 years.
Ah, yes, breatharianism. It pops up throughout history.
Right.
But the sources are, like, rightfully skeptical. There's no scientific evidence to support it. And attempting to live without food is incredibly dangerous.
Yeah, it's definitely pushing the limits of believability.
For sure.
But here's the thing that I find really interesting. Giri Bala was a cook,
Oh.
and apparently she loved feeding people.
Wow. Now that is fascinating.
I know, right?
That's a pretty interesting contradiction.
It is. Makes you wonder if it's a case of self-deception
Yeah.
or even a deliberate attempt to, mislead people.
It's a good reminder that even people who are revered for their spirituality,
Yeah.
they can be complex.
Human.
Yeah, and their claims should be carefully examined.
Totally. So we've been talking about all these individual stories.
Yeah.
But what about Yogananda himself?
Right.
The sources you gave me, they don't shy away from the controversies surrounding him.
Yeah.
And the SRF, the organization he founded.
Right. There were accusations of the SRF being a cult and also claims of financial irregularities.
Yeah.
These are aspects of his legacy that are important to acknowledge.
They're part of the story.
Yeah, even as we explore the more spiritual aspects of his teachings.
It's a good reminder that, nobody's perfect, not even gurus, right?
Nobody's perfect.
And speaking of not perfect, the sources also mention some of Yogananda's predictions about the future.
Yeah.
Which, well, they didn't exactly come true.
Not quite.
He predicted a revolution in America, England losing its status as a world power,
Wow.
China absorbing Japan, even World War III and IV.
It's a humbling reminder that even the most influential spiritual figures, they can get things wrong.
Totally.
Their visions of the future aren't infallible.
Right.
And history is full of surprises.
Yeah, I guess even with, deep spiritual insight, the future is still a mystery. Right?
It is a mystery.
But before we wrap up, I want to touch on the deep dive into the SRF itself.
Yes.
The sources give this really detailed picture of the organization, its history, and even some of the internal struggles it's faced.
Yeah, it's like a peek behind the curtain of a spiritual organization.
Totally.
The sources talk about the legal battles they had with a rival group, allegations of misconduct within the fellowship,
Oh, wow.
and even the challenges of maintaining Yogananda's legacy after his death.
It's a reminder that even spiritual organizations, even ones founded on these amazing ideals,
Right.
they're still human endeavors.
They are.
They face the same kinds of challenges as any other group.
And I think that's a really valuable takeaway.
I agree.
It encourages us to be discerning, to realize that these institutions aren't immune to human imperfections,
Right.
but it also shows the dedication of individuals who are trying to live out their spiritual principles, even in the face of those challenges.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point.
Yeah.
So where does all of this leave us? We've gone from healing photographs to Breatharianism.
It's been quite the journey.
It really has.
Yeah.
From bilocation to prophecies that, miss the mark. It's been quite a ride.
What strikes me is this consistent thread of critical thinking that runs through all of your sources.
Yeah.
It's not about debunking every single thing, but it's about engaging with these stories in a thoughtful way,
Right.
acknowledging both the sense of wonder they inspire and the potential for skepticism.
Yeah, it's like approaching these claims with an open mind.
Yes.
But also a healthy dose of show me the evidence.
Exactly. That's a valuable approach for any deep dive, really, no matter the subject.
Yeah, that's true.
The power of belief is undeniable, right?
Absolutely.
But that doesn't automatically validate every claim. It's up to each of us to weigh the evidence, consider different perspectives, and ultimately come to our own conclusions.
So what does all of this mean for you? What resonates with you personally from these extraordinary stories?
Oh, that's a great question.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's that reminder
Yeah.
that even if some of these stories end up being, explained away or
Yeah.
we have to view them with a bit more skepticism,
Yeah.
the core themes in Autobiography of a Yogi, they still have this magnetic pull.
I agree.
Yeah.
That potential for meditation, self-discovery, the idea of connecting to something bigger than ourselves.
It resonates so deeply.
It really does.
Whether or not every single miracle story is literally true.
That's the heart of it, isn't it?
I think
The real power is in that invitation to actually explore these practices for ourselves.
exactly.
To cultivate inner peace,
Yeah.
to expand our awareness,
Yeah.
and to connect with, a deeper dimension of existence.
Beautifully said.
So even if we're reading these stories with our critical thinking caps on,
Right.
we can still embrace the transformative potential of the practices that Yogananda shared with the world.
Absolutely. And that's where discernment comes in. We can be inspired by these stories
Yeah.
without taking everything at face value. It's about finding that balance
Yeah,
between wonder and skepticism,
I love that.
allowing ourselves to be amazed while also engaging intellectually.
It's like taking that inspiration and weaving it into our own lives.
Exactly.
Trying out meditation, exploring different spiritual paths,
Right.
and seeing what resonates with our own personal journeys.
That's the real beauty of a deep dive like this, isn't it?
It is.
It sparks curiosity,
Mhm.
it challenges our assumptions, and it empowers us to become more discerning seekers of knowledge and meaning.
I love that.
Right.
So as you continue your own deep dive into Autobiography of a Yogi
Yeah.
and the wider world of spirituality,
Right.
remember to approach it with that same spirit of inquiry. Embrace the wonder,
Yeah.
question the claims,
Yes.
and most importantly, trust your own intuition and experience.
Because at the end of the day, the most profound discoveries are often the ones we make within ourselves.
And on that note, we'll leave you to continue your journey.
Safe travels.
Happy exploring, everybody. It's been quite the exploration, hasn't it?
It really has. And even if, some of these stories end up having like a more rational explanation,
Right.
or we have to kind of view them through a more skeptical lens,
Yeah.
the core themes in Autobiography of a Yogi,
Yeah.
they still have this pull,
They do. They really do.
Yeah.
That potential for meditation, self-discovery, the idea of connecting to something bigger than ourselves,
Yeah,
it resonates so deeply.
it really does.
Whether or not every single miracle story is literally true,
That's the heart of it, I think.
I think so too. The real power lies in that invitation to actually try these practices for ourselves,
Yes.
to cultivate inner peace,
Yeah.
to expand our awareness, to connect with a deeper dimension of existence.
Beautifully said.
So even if we're reading these stories with our critical thinking caps on,
Right.
we can still embrace the transformative potential of what Yogananda was sharing.
Absolutely. And that's where discernment comes in, I think. We can be inspired by these stories
Yeah.
without, blindly accepting everything. It's about finding that balance
Yeah.
between wonder and healthy skepticism,
I love that.
allowing ourselves to be amazed, be open to these possibilities,
Yeah.
but also engage intellectually.
It's like taking that inspiration and then weaving it into our own lives, right?
Exactly.
Trying out meditation,
Yeah.
exploring different spiritual paths, and seeing what resonates for us.
That's what it's all about, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is.
This is the beauty of a deep dive like this. It, sparks our curiosity. It challenges our assumptions.
Certainly.
And ultimately, it empowers us to become more discerning seekers in our own lives.
Seekers of knowledge, seekers of meaning, yeah.
Exactly.
So as you continue your own deep dive into Autobiography of a Yogi and the wider world of spirituality,
Yeah.
remember to approach it with that same spirit of inquiry, that same openness. Embrace the wonder,
Yes.
question the claims, and most importantly, trust your own intuition. Trust your own experience.
Because at the end of the day, the most profound discoveries are the ones we make within.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah.
And on that note, we'll leave you to continue your journey. Happy exploring, everyone.
Hermit.